The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced?
Stop right there!
From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
They let us play with all our toys, they let us think that we're big boys, they let us make the louder noise, but women rule the world. They let us think we're Superman.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on iTunes and TuneIn. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. I will stop till I reach the top just to be there with you.
Dave, oh Dave, are you playing with Bigfoot and aliens again?
Dad, you gotta stop haunting the ghost. It's scaring them.
All right, seriously, put down the pointy sticks.
Okay! Game on! Game on! Game on!
The password is...
All right.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio. Mr. Bumblefoot, Dave is ready for liftoff.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you.
Seriously, Dave? Really? Aren't you a little old for a tinfoil hat?
Hello, Toby. Bye-bye. Love you. Bye-bye.
Please take your seat above us. There will be a prepare for pickup. Start. 2, 1. Boost ignition and lift off.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. The deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Space Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, and it's great to have you along for the ride on this Wednesday, August 9th, Thursday, August 10th. If you're on the East Coast or across the pond, hope you had a great day. At night, we are live right here in the Great White North, on top of the Smoky Mountains of British Columbia, as we are here 7 days a week. We welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network. Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live at spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Like our music, get your horns up for Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy. Bumblefoot is the official sound of Spaced Out Radio. You can follow us all over social media on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download our shows on iTunes. And, of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. And if you head on over to patreon.com for as low as $1 a month, you can become a patron of SOR as well. Now, you got to do me a favor. If you want to take part in this show, you got to sign into one of our chat rooms, either on Revolution Radio, Spreaker, the UPRN chat room, or on Facebook, join the SOR Space Travelers Club. Or if you're on Twitter, go to the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. I will get to your questions and comments in there as well in real time. Now, if you head to our website for $5 a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. And as of right now, you can go to the Spaced Out Radio store, pick up a t-shirt, poster, stickers. Read up on the Encounter Online that deals with everything paranormal, courtesy of our editors, Eric Markham and Everett Thiemer. Check out my latest blog. And if you've had an experience you can't explain, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. We also have some great videos by Tim Doyle from UFOseekers.com and Leslie Mitchell Clark's Contact TV. We want you to check those out as well. Tonight, we bring back a very familiar voice to our airwaves. An award-winning author and movie director, Ian Holt, is back for 3 hours of some pretty interesting talk about everything from paranormal to music conspiracy. Growing up in New York and a Yankees fan, take that Mets fans, and around the entertainment industry, Ian has had his fair share of experiences in getting to know the behind-the-scenes affairs in both music and Hollywood. Growing up with the boys from famed rap group Public Enemy, Ian has had a special insider's look into one of the biggest conspiracies in music. Who killed infamous rapper Tupac Shakur? And hell, we're going to just throw it out there just for a lot of laughs. Is Elvis dead or alive? Music is on our minds tonight. Along the way, we will get into some paranormal television and a State of the Union of what's happening in the fields we love as well. Always a pleasure to bring Ian Holt back on to Spaced Out Radio. Ian, my friend, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Dave, and it's good to be back, and hello to everyone out there, old fans. Wow, I can't believe it's been like 2 months already since we've done this.
I know. You know what, my friend? I do have to say this, okay? I do want to say this. The way you interact with a lot of the Spaced Out Radio audience on social media, pretty much on an everyday basis, I got to tell you, man, I think that is the coolest thing. I just sit back and kind of watch and see what happens, and things will, jump up, and I'll see posts, or you're responding to posts. I think that's really cool that you take the time to do that, especially with our fans, because you know what, they love the interaction with our guests. So for you to do that, I got to say, on behalf of our listeners and myself especially, thank you so much for being so interactive.
Oh, well, you're welcome, and thank you to all the fans for contacting me. I mean, so much of the stuff that they send me is so great. I mean, I get articles on all the latest scientific discoveries and the latest in the paranormal stuff that they find, and I'm honored that they ask my opinion or want to keep me clued in, and I send them stuff when I find. It's a great, we have this similar interest, so it's a lot of fun to keep in contact with everyone.
Before we get into the whole music conspiracy side, because I want to spend a lot of time on this, because you were right there versus East versus West in the rap scene.
Yeah.
And, I don't think people understand how ugly that got. And we're going to get into that quite heavily tonight. But first, breaking news from earlier today. I don't know how familiar you are with Stan Romanek. Okay, this is a man who has a Netflix documentary on him on on his alien contact, or supposed alleged.
Yes. I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it.
And it's getting great ratings on Netflix because, let's face it, anything to do with aliens always seems to get great ratings. But today, or for the last 3 years, or 3 years ago, he was arrested on distribution of child pornography. And he vehemently denied it. His wife denied it, saying basically he's not that computer literate. And today he was found guilty of one of the 2 charges that were brought against him. His sentencing is October 19th. You know, it's easy to pick on people in this field. It really is. Because everybody in the mainstream thinks we're loopy. A little bit. And that's fine. But man, when you get involved with doing something sickening to children, and you're found guilty in a court of law, and by his answers in the newspaper article that I read, he is still quite in denial. He is on bond until his sentencing hearing. You know, what's your opinion?
Well, first off, anyone that would hurt a child is the lowest form of scum on the earth, and they deserve everything they have coming to them. But, you know, we live in a world where you click on something and, you know, how you wind up with it is, you know, I don't know enough about the case, but no matter how successful or true his video is, there's no excuse for harming a child. That's just beyond the bounds. You know, my philosophy, you know, when it comes to sexual, you know, anything you do is okay as long as it's between 2 consenting adults and no one gets hurt. So, or you know, 3 consenting adults, as long as the adults are consenting and no one gets hurt, that's fine. But you have to be an adult to, you know, to engage in it. And if you seek out on social media or anything else, you know, a child to molest them in any way or hurt them, you know, you are, I think it's even worse than rape because the child doesn't have any chance of defending himself. You know, it just sickens me. And the idea that, you know, I read this thing just recently because, you know, I'm a very much a proponent of peer-to-peer networks and freedom of the internet and all that, that there was a court ruling, there was a law passed that they were trying to stop convicted pedophiles when they get out of jail of ever getting on social media. And they overturned the law, the appeals court overturned the law based on First Amendment, that if you're a citizen of this country, once you get out of prison, you've served your time and you can't be denied your free speech. And I'm like, really? Is you know, is the chance of them doing it again greater than their chance of free speech? Don't we, when we do certain things that are so heinous, do we lose our certain rights? You know, it's an interesting question. And as we evolve in a society, you know, where we become wiser on these things and more evolved, we may, you know, we do need to look at our laws. And is it right for a guy to earn a living, you know, after doing something like that? I mean, these are all questions that we as a society have to figure out because, I mean, look at Jeepers Creepers. I mean, you know, we love those movies, but they're made by a convicted pedophile. And, you know, he also did that movie about the kid that's all white. I can't think of the name of the movie. And it has this scene of showing the backs of high school kids' asses in a shower, you know, and I watch that movie now and it's like, I can't look at it because I know the guy that did it, the director, is a pedophile. And he's got a bunch of kids, you know, naked in a shower. And it's, you know, how do you justify it? Where's the line? And we as a society have to figure this out because it's just far too prevalent in our society.
I get that. A lot of his supporters, okay, strongly believe, because of the extraterrestrial evidence and proof that he had, over 200 recorded and documented incidents on camera. Okay, a lot of people out there believe that this was a setup. Okay, that the government usually, I mean, let's face it, Ian, and I'm not saying the government is at fault here. I'm not putting my tinfoil hand. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. If the government wanted to ruin you because you were getting too close to some sort of answer, what's the greatest way to do that? What's the greatest way to ruin anybody?
Sense. I mean, that absolutely makes sense. We've had people thrown out of windows, conspiracies about guys that were involved in the cover-up and then decided to come out, and and they were thrown out of windows. I mean, strange deaths. There's a lot of incidents of supposed suicides of people, and people dying after releasing, supposedly top secret information. So I can't say that didn't happen, but we have to really look at the case. And like I always say, I watch the OJ trial every day, and I saw blood move from one place to another at different times. I'm not saying they planted it, but the evidence collection was tainted then. And when I watched the news at night, none of it was in there. Everything was slanted towards the guilt. And if you watch the trial every minute of it, like I did, which I took it in like a sponge because it was a great opportunity as a writer to understand how the court system works. But you didn't see what was, if you came home from work at a 9-to-5 job and watched the news, you didn't see what the evidence was presented that was exculpatory. So I always say, our media, it's easier for them to jump on and say, okay, the guy's guilty, instead of actually looking at the case, because they only have a few minutes to do it. And, you hope that there are projects, like the Innocence Project and those places where if someone is wrongly convicted, that someone will check the evidence. I mean, the Fatal Attraction killer can't get the glove that they claim that proves her guilt before DNA to be tested now. You had the Robin Hood Hills killers, right, convicted because they were goths and horror lovers and wrote horror stories, at Damien. And, even after the DNA proved that he wasn't guilty, they still wouldn't let him out of jail. So, yes, we always have to measure, in my opinion, someone's guilt or innocence based on the whole picture. And if it's something that you're interested in, a case that gets your attention, before you make a final judgment, you really got to go read the articles on it, the longer articles that you find on the internet that has the time to explain everything, before you make a decision. And it would be interesting to look at that case and see really what the evidence is. And, usually pedophiles do not just do one thing. There's always something else in the background. I mean, it's like when Dennis Hastert came out with one kid, all of a sudden all these other kids came out, and now they were grown, but they came out and said he had molested them. So it's interesting. It seems that it's a little odd that a guy would just be doing, child porn on the internet and not have any other incidents, even attempts. That's a little strange to me, because it's kind of a inbred thing, or it's also derives from our culture. And I at NYU, I took a lot of deviance and society classes so I could write better villains. And one of the things that psychologists keep coming up with is when someone at a certain age, a young age, bullying starts, and you're not a popular kid, you look, especially when they're coming into adolescence, you look at the other girls or boys in the class and you know you can't date any of them. And somehow the mind gets stunted, like it's got to fulfill that urge that their dating ability somehow stops because they didn't date at the age that everyone else did, and they become attracted to underage people of the opposite sex or the same sex because they were denied that, and it's like stunts you in some way. So, I mean, there are a lot of reasons. So it's not always just a mental issue. It's that you're born with. It's something that can happen to you, and you have to weigh all those things and realize that our society is such. Look at the movie Maniac. I mean, he was fat, crater face, was a janitor, couldn't get a hot girl, and that movie spoke to a lot of people that were saying, well, look, media tells you got to have the right job, you got to look a certain way, you got to have a certain amount of money, and you can't date the beautiful girl because the media says she's beautiful. That's why I think the plus size models and models that look like real women are great. That's out there now. I mean, we create our own monsters in a lot of ways because we say what is the perfect attainable thing, that if you're the greatest, if you're going to be cool and the coolest guy and the best guy, you got to have this. And if you don't have it, you're less. And women, I know a lot of women that, the first thing they ask on a dating site is, what job do you have and what's your income? And if it doesn't match their needs or their wants, they won't date. Guys, yet women want to be liberated. So there's a sense of, if a working woman doesn't need the man anymore. So it becomes about finding the perfect guy. And there's nothing wrong with that. But for some men who feel that, that caveman inbred need to provide, and they can't, or they, a woman would, a long time ago, would be forced into a marriage because someone had to take care of her. She couldn't own property and always could vote and all these things. So you had to be taken care of. So you had to hope for a good marriage, and there was a dowry and the whole thing, right? All that's gone, and that's a good thing. But I think, in a lot of ways, for some men, it leaves them out of the equation, and that's why marriages are dropping, and there are more single people. And I think it breeds in some people that can't deal with it violence, whether it be towards children that's where they were stunted. Well, you didn't want to date me back then, and I have an attraction to people at that age because that's where I stunted. Or, women don't want me, so I grow angry at women and they lash out. I think, I think we create our own Frankensteins, by our, I'm dating a girl that's not from America, and it's a whole different culture in Europe. It's like somehow in Europe, a lot of places in Europe, they still understand the old ways. Well, women are liberated just the same. There's a sense of attraction over a checklist. It's like, okay, you don't have to pay for my date. If we go on a date, I'll pay for my dinner. You don't have to pay for both of us. There's a little bit of, more of, it's not as bad a thing if a woman has a better job than a man. There's a difference. There's a little cultural difference between, Europe and America, which I think Europe has somehow found a way in a lot of places to deal with women's liberation and men's, need to be a man in a better way than we do here, and it's not like that all over the country. I mean, you could go to Middle America, down south, it's a little different, but in the big cities and the major metropolises, there's definitely more of, well, that's the perfect guy for me because he has the right job and he's got the right income and, and the right car, and he weighs the right amount and he works out and, and it's a whole different culture. And, it's very hard for people that have less money. If you notice, people that have less money because it's expensive to eat right, because we use, different kind of corn starches and stuff in the cheaper foods, which makes them cheaper, which makes you gain weight more. So it's, it creates a situation where, you are not able to eat as healthy and be in shape, which, a lot of this is how someone looks, and it's a lot of surface, and we're shallow in a lot of ways, our culture, and it plays into everything. It plays into all our thought processes.
I'm gonna reel you back in here because I'm trying to figure out, no offense, buddy, how we got from a child porn conviction to dietary substance.
Well, it's part of our society. We create these things by our media. That's what I was trying to get to, the long-winded way, because there's a lot of caveats to it. And I don't want to offend anyone, but without saying it all out, but we create this by our own society, the way we accept bullying, the way we accept violence in families and beatings, and and our media, the images we project of what someone should be, instead of accepting people for what they are.
Mm-hmm. And I can understand the whole purpose, and trust me, I don't think you took a breath through that entire thing. I'll be honest with you, and that was pretty awesome. But the point that I'm getting at is, do you think, and playing devil's advocate here, do you think there's a lot of validity to the people out there who are defending Stan Romanek in saying that maybe that evidence was implanted because of the fact that he was calling out the government right out, in saying, you guys are hiding this. Tell us what's going on. And they finally had enough of him trying to exploit them that they said, well, we'll take care of you this way. Do you think that's possible?
I absolutely think it's possible. I mean, like I said, there have been, so many strange deaths, and after people have released information, and heart attacks that happen out of the blue when a person wasn't sick, people being thrown out of windows, as they say, committed suicide. And what's interesting is, poisoning, supposedly, a lot of it follows the same pattern that we see out of Russia with journalists and people that oppose Putin. It seems that the government works in a certain way, the shadowy wet works of the governments, and it's a lot of the deaths and supposed suicides from people that reveal top secret information when it comes to supposed alien conspiracy die the same way. So that's another interesting thing for me. You see that the comparison to the way the KGB supposedly kills as opposed to how these people disappear, and there's a lot of discrediting, of people. In a modern society, we may not kill, we'll just discredit. There's no easier way to discredit someone and turn people completely off to them than by accusing them of child pornography.
Go ahead, please.
It's just interesting. I'd like to know, if there were other incidents, because if it's just on the internet and there's just that one avenue for his pedophilia, that doesn't really fit a psychological pattern of someone who's a real child molester. There would be actual physical incidents.
Well, I will read it. It said the 12-member jury decided it had enough evidence against Romanek to determine he knowingly possessed child pornography on his computer, but that he did not knowingly disseminate the illicit images and videos through an internet file sharing program, as he was acquitted of the more serious of the 2 felonies. So his wife went on record, basically says, my boy Sam, or Stan, whatever his name is, could barely turn a computer on. How did he get into porn? And that, or child porn, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not advanced on the computer. I don't even know where to look for that crap. And that's what it is. It's garbage.
I'll tell you something that happened to me. My mom loved the Jeremy Irons movie, Lolita. She thought it was a fantastic telling of the novel, even better than the Kubrick version. And it's not available because of all the controversy over the movie. And I went to look it up to see if there was a foreign version of it. I punched it into Google and I put in Lolita movie, and all this, stuff came up with little girls and things. How does that come up on Google? Why should it even come up? Isn't there some filter or something that prevents that?
Well, there should be. There absolutely should be.
Absolutely should be.
But I mean, I just don't get it. Like, I don't even know, not that I would care to know, I don't even know where to get that crap. And I think most people are like that. And if you have it in your possession, you got it from somewhere. And in this case, because people want to believe his UFO stories, it makes for an interesting case as to his defense. The government is out to get me because I'm calling them out on UFOs. Look at the evidence I got. And by the way, in order to shut me up, they put child porn on my computer.
Well, there's also interesting stuff, how he got it. When you go on the peer-to-peer networks, people put a lot of stuff up under false names or coded names. So if you are someone that's looking for a porn movie to watch on a peer-to-peer network and, you click on something, you could wind up downloading something by accident. That's for sure. I've known people that happened to and they reported it, and, it would be interesting to know how it got there. I mean, they should be able to go back to find out if he was searching for it or it just mysteriously appeared on the computer. I would be interested in what the forensic analysis of his computer showed.
And me too. Unfortunately, you're not going to get that with the whole situation, unless we were sitting in the courthouse until more information starts coming out. But on the flip side...
and there's no interest in the media to take a nonpartisan stand because most of the viewers are going to be for this guy being convicted because you just mentioned pedophilia and everyone's like, string him up. So it's not advantageous to the ratings to present any exculpatory evidence.
Absolutely. But it still comes into play, that this is a gentleman who, as his experiences started to slow down, it has been proven he started faking evidence. He was caught right on a live video, chucking a pencil at his head and saying, "Oh, who did that? What happened there? How did that happen?"
Well,
and yet you see his hand, move. But I will say this, there were a lot of people out there absolutely raking his evidence over the coals. And
I've seen a lot of that.
And everybody says, the alien at the window was so fake. It was a puppet moving up and down or whatever. And his reaction seemed fake. I've had that happen. I know what that's like. I can tell you, looking at that video, I don't think that's fake at all. I really don't. That's just me. I could be fooled.
The issue we talked about last time. Because there's so much fakery. Even that video you you remarked about on Facebook about the spaceship coming out of the circle in the sky. It looked so fake. And, you know, your rant on Facebook was exactly what we were talking about. There's so much faked evidence out there that when people see real stuff, if it doesn't, you know, get filmed a certain way, it looks fake. And then if it's too good, it looks CGI'd. So you can't win because of all the, you know, the fakery.
No, I understand that. And I posted one of those yesterday on my Facebook, basically saying, you know, if you want us to be taken seriously in this field, stop spreading this crap around. Now, the ironic part about it is I actually shared the video in order to get the message out. You know, but how else do I do that? And I understand, you know, that there are a lot of people who maybe have not been in that situation as Stan Romanek with his experiences. We don't know. I think a lot of his experiences were valid. I don't know how many. I don't know the man. Never talked to him. But I can say this, his work now, his lifetime of work in gathering information, and yes, he may have been a media whore. Yes, he may have wanted really bad to be that top star in the field of ufology because it made him feel like something of value. But everything now, Ian, because of this conviction, is all for naught. Would you agree?
Yeah, and it's something that, you know, happened in reverse with the Amityville Horror family, the Lutzes. You know, the husband wanted money and recognition because it was a true story. They didn't get paid. The author got paid. So, you know, this caused a rift in the family. The mother, who protecting her kids, didn't want all the people around. So she, when they got divorced, she claimed it was all, you know, that they faked it. And that has hung over it all these years that she claimed that. And the true story, you know, I've spoken to the Lutz children, is that mother did that to protect them and to get the media off of them because they didn't want any of it. They never wanted it to come out, and they never thought it would be like it was, you know. And then the fact that they made no money on it, and everyone got, you know, the author got rich on it, and the studio got rich on it, and they're still making Amityville Horror movies, and the family gets nothing. So, you know, it becomes this idea going all the way back to when paranormal started with Houdini and the fake mediums and all of this. We have such a bad rap, and when a guy like Romanek gets accused of this stuff, it just adds to the fact of the feeling from the general public that we're all crazies. You know, we're all weird. We're all, you know, deviant in some way because we've experienced things or believe in things, you know, or we're gullible, or we're, you know, all the things they say about us, you know, or we're looking to make money on it. Like they'll say, but they could say about you, everything you do, you know, is to promote your radio show. So everyone on there, everything is for eventual, you know, for you to make money. You want to make money off the show.
I make no bones about it. I'm going to be honest with my listeners, but I'm here to make money. Eventually, I would like to make money, and I have never hid from that. But am I going to?
Isn't every news channel about making money too? But is everything they say fake?
No, but hold on. Now you're getting into it. This is going to be fun. Great topic now. Let's do this thing, man. My gloves are off. Okay? I have no problem that I want to make this a career. Does that mean that I am going to change my side and skirt the truth? Not at all. Am I going to continue providing what I feel is the most honest coverage of these topics that anybody can find? Absolutely. Now, to compare that to the mainstream media, where outlets have already chosen political sides, which goes against everything journalism stands for, Ian, everything it stands for, okay, you can't compare the two. And you know what? I have no problem saying, okay, I'm better. call that egotistical, but you know why I'm better? I'm calling it straight and narrow. I'm neither left nor right. Okay? There are retired hosts who've bailed on their show 2 or 3 times, maybe 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times, who are saying who they are picking for president. Okay? That's not your job behind the microphone. Your job is to give equal sides.
And we have, models, beauty queens, people that have that don't have journalism backgrounds or degrees. They have communications majors doing the news because our society expects a certain look. Because if a girl's pretty, they put lights on and they wear short skirts, right? They tell them to wear short skirts and put lights on. You have how many true black people are giving the news? There's Joy Reid, maybe a few others that are actual dark-skinned black people that are giving the news. Everyone else is, light-skinned, green eyes, and it becomes a joke that they decide who gives the news based on how someone looks. It should be, as it was in the early days, when it was Edward R. Murrow and Walter Cronkite that came out of print journalism with a journalism degree and journalistic ethics. And you have, just like in Hollywood, you have business people running, the news channels and the Hollywood studios, where you used to have filmmakers and journalists running the news channels and the Hollywood studios. Business people are only there to make money, and they're there about presenting a narrative, that sells. If you watch the presidential election cycle, you'll see the media choose someone that's low, build them up, and then break them down, and then it's the rocky recovery, and all of a sudden you've got Bill Clinton, the comeback kid, which was the greatest story for the media because it fit a narrative of like a soap opera where you would tune in every day to see what's going to happen. That's not news. That's structuring a story. If a policeman goes into an investigation of a homicide and decides at the beginning who's guilty and then shapes the evidence to fit the person that they feel is guilty and not follow the evidence, but shape it to fit a narrative, that's how police work. Convictions are overturned on that. And when we have our media doing it.
I understand that. And the problem that we have here is, we have too many people right now who are journalists who are struggling because they won't conform. I know my first job in radio, going back to 1998, working at a little radio station, mom and pop radio station on Vancouver Island, where my studio had the most beautiful view of the Strait of Georgia. And I saw the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life, which was the sun rising at 5 o'clock in the morning right through a low-cloud lightning storm. If you've never seen that, you're missing out. Because the lightning was like all sorts of different colors. It was absolutely amazing. Long story short, a mother with 2 children on welfare in Canada was making more, I think $200 or $300 more a month than me with a college degree in journalism, working in radio for my first job. Okay?
There you go.
It is a horrific example. And to some of my colleagues, I was high paid. So we tried, in order to make more money, Ian, we actually started sending as many stories as possible to the news line called Broadcast News, because Broadcast News paid $50 a story. So we would send story after story after story to try and make an extra couple $100 a month just so we'd have some spending money. It's a tough gig, man. It's a tough gig.
Well,
but
go ahead. I'm sorry.
What I was going to say is, but the integrity of choosing left or choosing right never dawned on us.
I was watching the news today, and I'm not going to say names because I don't want to, if it gets out, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But there was a woman from a major newspaper who was not attractive in the general sense. She was overweight. She had a mole on her face. And, you know, not that she was ugly, but the fact that she wasn't the quote unquote, you know, industry standard, let's say, of the way the women or men look on TV. And this woman was so insightful with her report that she was giving, and so interesting and so professional and so good. Well, you know, it was so interesting. And they had a whole panel of people that were pretty faces. They kept cutting away from her to go to someone else that was pretty to explain what she was saying. And I'm like, I don't want someone else to explain or add on to her. I want to hear what she's saying. She's doing the nitty-gritty on the ground reporting. This woman was a real journalist, and they kept cutting away. And I just felt, I can't say for sure, but I felt like, you know, this woman was being prejudiced against because she wasn't a traditional beauty, and they wanted to get her off the camera before they thought someone was going to change the channel. And I just pictured this hairy dude in the control room saying, "Get the camera off her," because they kept cutting away. And she was the most interesting one there. And it wasn't about what she was saying. It was about how people looked. And this was just today. And I remember getting really pissed off about it. Because, you know, to me, you know, I always used to say, people used to say I was crazy because when I saw The Fisher King, I fell in love with Amanda Plummer. And they were like, "Oh, she's not pretty." I'm like, who cares? Look at her talent. Look how good she is. You know, look how great she is as an actress. You know, and my friends would be like, "Oh, please." I'd be like, "You guys are nuts. There's more to a person than just how they look. A person could become attractive to you for a lot of different reasons." She was so freaking talented in everything she did, and her career never took off. She was nominated for awards and stuff, and they wouldn't cast her because she was always playing the crazy person or the weird person or the strange person. And I'm like, look how good she is. What difference does it make? People look all different ways. And journalism has become, you know, not about journalistic ethics anymore, because the people that it's giving us the news are not journalists. So they have no qualm about giving an opinion or shaping a story. They listen to their producers. I mean, I listen to people, men and women, on the news on the weekends where you have the second string people, and you would have them ask a question, right? And the guy goes beyond the answer, the person answering, and answers more than that question. And then the next question comes out. You could see it's coming through the earbud, being fed to the anchor is being fed this stuff by a producer off screen. And they ask a question that the person just answered. And he says, "Well, like I just said," you know, and I'm like, is that anchor a man or a woman? Is it a robot or is it a journalist? And for me as an actor, trained as an actor, the most important thing is listening. And I've done thousands and thousands of interviews, and the key to it is listening. You know, that's why, what's his name on Talking Dead is so good, because Hardwick, because he listens and asks the question and shuts up and lets the person answer. And that is a great interview because it's not about them.
No, it should never be about them. It should never be about the host. It should never be about, you know, fear-mongering or anything. We've developed that attitude around here. And I think that's why, as a show, without bragging, I think that's why a lot of people are becoming attracted to what we do, because we call it down the middle. It's not that hard, and yet it always seems to be such an issue.
You're a great interviewer. I mean, you ask provocative questions that allows me or anyone as a guest to give a juicy response to it, and that's a skill that, you could learn over time, but it's something that you naturally have because you have an interest in the subject matter. If you're interviewing someone and you don't have an interest in what they're talking about, it's really hard to get a good answer. And you also have to, like when I start rambling, you have to move it to get the person back on track. Arsenio was a terrible interviewer. He would go, and be all leaning forward and he would just let them go on and talk about whatever they wanted. And the show would just go in any direction, and a host has to be able to let the person talk, but also guide them to get to the point.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And we got about 5.5 minutes before we have to go to our...
Are you kidding? The whole hour is gone already?
I know. And I think you only got about 3 breaths in the entire hour.
It's the Red Bull.
I was going to ask if it was the Red Bull. We got to get Red Bull to sponsor you when you come on, because you're on fire, my friend. You're on fire.
It was a long week and I was tired. And I said, I didn't take any Red Bull today. I said, I'm going to save it for the show because I'm going to be knocked out by the time we go. Because remember, I'm on the East Coast, so it's 3 hours later out here. So it's already 1 o'clock in the morning here.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And I'm still sitting at 9:51 p.m. and I haven't seen the sun in about 12 days due to smoke.
Is it still smoke? There's still fires and smoke?
Yeah, dude, there's still, every day at about 7 o'clock, we have a runway about, oh goodness, I'm going to say not even a mile from our house. And, well, maybe a mile, if that. And this is where they're landing and taking off all the firefighting helicopters from. So every day, all I hear is choppers coming in and out. And me being an aircraft buff, it's right up my alley. Right up my alley. But, there comes a point where you realize that those helicopters are really, really getting tiresome. Because as long as they are there, that means there's forest fires being fought. And our area is still so bone dry. This past week, they banned any ATVs, off-road vehicles, or motorbikes from any mountain trails or logging access roads. They have basically told everybody, do not turn on any chainsaws or lawnmowers, and if you are going to mow your lawn, make sure you wet down your grass before you mow it, and then after you mow it, put your sprinkler back on, so that way nothing dries too quickly. Today's the first day I've been able to actually put my sprinklers on, and you know your lawn is dry when you walk on your grass and it goes crunch, 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 crunch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
I have never seen it that dry. Like, dude, it is like you feel gross,
And you got to be concerned because if the wind picks up, you're going to have sparks flying through the air again.
Absolutely. It's funny because the fire hall near my area, it's about, if we were to play a round of golf, we're talking a good solid par 5, 550 yards, okay, from my house to the fire hall. And my fire hall, and people have heard it on this show, where all of a sudden the fire hall alarm will go off. It's like a big air raid siren, okay? That air raid siren has been off for a month because they don't want to panic people into all the spot fires that are going on and will continue to go on, because underneath the ground, anywhere from dirt level, right where the top of the ground, down to about 2 feet, there are roots burning.
Oh, my God.
Okay.
And I keep thinking about the firefighters that are fighting this thing constantly. Yeah. Eventually you got to get burned out, and that's when, you make a little slip up and God forbid something happens. I mean, how long can they keep going? You gotta, pray that they're okay, because, I mean, there's only so many of them that do this kind of work, and they got to be taxed to the max.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they're rotating in and out. They really are. But, I mean, it's tiresome. You just get sick of all the signs, Ian. You get sick of the helicopters. You get sick of the noise. You get sick of the smell. You get sick of your lungs hurting because of, you're in constant fire smoke. And even though right now, like, it's sitting very high, it still comes down. You know what I'm saying? You just get sick of it.
Well, you're lucky. You got to be lucky, because I remember during Hurricane Sandy when the sanitation and water filtration systems got flooded out and everything, all the electricity blew. We didn't have clean water. We weren't able to flush our toilets. So you got to be lucky to your hard luck sometimes, because at least you've got a way to stay in your house and live a little bit. Even with all of that, because we had to bug out. I mean, the smell in the water around the house and the garbage everywhere was just unbelievable. And, what a hassle to get food. We were being fed by the Red Cross and, the National Guard were coming in. And there were some amazing people that came from all over the country with food trucks and making us food and stuff. It was a real humbling experience, that how little it takes for everything to go haywire and the center doesn't hold,
Absolutely. Ian, I'm going to get you to hold on. We are going to hop out for our first break of the night. Ian Holt is our guest. We're talking media. We're talking conspiracy. We're going to get into a little bit of rap music, East versus West. We're going back about 20 years here, see what's happening between the East Coast Pride and California Love. With Ian Holt, our guest, all night tonight on the Mighty SOR. We'll be back right after this.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spaceoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spaceoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over the Spaced Out Radio night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
Want a place to share your experiences without feeling judged? We have the place for you. If you've experienced sightings or contact with ETs, ghosts, cryptids, or UFOs, and you'd like someone to confidentially look into the matter, just fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Our goal is to help you get the answers you need to the experiences you've had with our professional team of researchers. Your information stays 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines report. Fill out your experience today only at spacedoutradio.com.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience. Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays with me, Dave Cruz from Beyond the Strange. Our weekly feature on spacedoutradio.com will take you around the world discussing everything from the paranormal to the latest conspiracies from the top guests in their fields. We won't leave any story uncovered. Spaced Out Saturdays at spacedoutradio.com starting 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, Dr. Michael Salla is going to talk to us about exopolitics. That gets going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. Good to have you with us. We're live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, The Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Iracundulus. Iracundulus is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, because Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter, at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. Follow me on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. You can also listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States, iTunes, TuneIn. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. Listen to some Bumblefoot. Yeah, you can rock with the guitar god himself. You can join the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. Read The Encounter. Check out Contact TV, or UFO Seekers, and so much more. Tonight, one of our favorite guests comes on every second month. Ian Holt is back, talking everything conspiracy about music this next hour. Ian, how you doing, buddy?
How you doing, Dave? I'm doing good. This is going to be an interesting conversation. You know, it gets it a lot into, you know, my past of how I, you know, came up and the people that I worked with and all that. So it's going to be a little personal.
Well, you know what? Before we get into it, let's tell everybody the history behind you, because indirectly you are quite involved in the East versus West rap scene, because you grew up with one of the top rap groups coming out of the entire rap scene. They're almost like the Godfathers, like Run DMC is, in Public Enemy. So take us back to your childhood, how you got involved with all of this.
Well, it was back in the early 80s. I was a kid out here in Long Beach, and before Public Enemy was Public Enemy, they were a DJ crew called Spectrum City. And they played with a lot of rappers from the area, including the Fat Boys and LL Cool J and the Beastie Boys. And they would throw parties at the Martin Luther King Youth Center in what's considered the black part of town here in Long Beach. And I had an interesting childhood in the fact that my dad was in the Navy at the end of World War II and was being prepared for the invasion of Japan. And when it dropped the bomb, he got out. And he went into the Merchant Marine and wound up in Cuba, and he met a bunch of his mob buddies there from back in the Bronx. And he wound up getting his name on a Club Americana and was the MC and host there, and because he had a clean name. And, you know, he had experiences where he dealt with people of all races and colors and creeds, and, you know, and he depended on them for his life in a lot of ways. And, you know, he wound up escaping from Cuba on the night Castro came down from the mountains in a fishing boat. It's a whole huge story. But, you know, that shaped him in getting involved in the civil rights movement. And, you know, he moved us out of Brooklyn when I was a kid, because in that neighborhood, a black person couldn't walk down the street without being harassed because it wasn't their neighborhood. And my mom, you know, family was in the entertainment business, so they were friends with everyone from Sammy Davis to Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. My dad went to, you know, high school with Tony Curtis. You know, and, you know, it was my mom's best friend and my nanny when I was a kid was a black woman named Fylth, who I loved her, and her son was my best friend. And, you know, my mom's hairdresser was a gay transvestite. She used to invite them over to the house all the time. So I grew up in a way that color or sexuality or any of that never meant anything to me. You know, it was just people, you know, and I grew up in that great atmosphere where I never had that racial, you know, divide, where I could be friends with anybody and based on their personality. That led to me, you know, having a lot of friends of all different colors and playing sports at school and hanging out in the black part of town a lot, where a lot of white kids never hung out. and because of that, when there were events at the Martin Luther King Center, I would go, and I'd hear, there were parties and dance parties and DJs playing there, and which was the scene back then. And through that, I met the guys from Spectrum, Keith Shockley and Hank Shockley, Terminator X and the S1Ws and Professor Griff, before even Chuck D got involved with them. So it was great watching them, develop from a DJ crew into a rap group and on radio at Adelphi University, where they really got their start. And through those friendships of people that were around them, when I was in college, I met a friend who a friend of mine was working. I introduced them to some of the friends that were around Public Enemy, a guy named Ozzie Gibson and Rohan Thompson, and they were representing a Jamaican version of Crisscross. They did Jamaican chanting rap. And when I graduated, I wound up going to Romania to do my Dracula study and put together the screenplay. And when I came back, it coincided with a time where Yo MTV Raps was really big. And Dr. Dre and Ed Lover were getting ready to do their movie, Who's the Man? And they had a deal at Universal to remake the Abbott and Costello movies with Joe Dante, who did The Howling and a bunch of other movies. You may know him if you're a horror fan. They were looking for someone to find the first movie was going to be Buck Privates, the Abbott and Costello movie. And then the next one was going to be Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein, and they couldn't figure out how to do it, modernize it. So my friend Ozzie said, you got to meet my buddy who he grew up with, who was also from Long Island, Dr. Dre. And, because you're the Dracula guy, you know the monsters, maybe you could crack this nut that we can't figure out. So I went to meet Dre, and we hit it off immediately. But I told him my Romania stories. Dre's a horror fan, and he just ate it up. And he said, "So what's your idea? Do you have an idea?" And I said, "Yeah, Dr. Dre and Ed Lover meet Blackula," and he became hysterical. And we pitched it to Joe Dante, and before I knew it, I had my first gig writing a movie for Dr. Dre and Ed Lover. And then the Rodney King verdict came down the day Who's the Man opened, and it did no business, and the Universal put the Abbott and Costello remakes into turnaround, and I basically lost my job. And Dre felt guilty about it, and, I was so excited and all that. I was doing such a great job. He invited me to come work for him at Yo MTV Raps, and that changed my life. I met, so many people in the music industry, all the stars. I mean, and everyone from Bill Cosby on down, and it was Quincy Jones and Mario and Melvin Van Peebles, and I mean these are the people I hung out with, and it was just an amazing experience, and one that it allowed me to meet a lot of people and be at ground zero for a lot of the most turbulent times in the music industry, when we had the labeling issues and the Senate hearings on the violence in the music and Tipper Gore and the whole thing, and also the East and West Coast so-called rivalry and war. It was a very trying time because, there was no war when I started. In fact, it wasn't in Straight Outta Compton, but how NWA began is a very interesting story. My friend T Money, who was the mailman on Yo MTV Raps, and was the first group signed by Def Jam, under Original Concept, which also was Dr. Dre was in that group. T-Money had gone with Keith Shockley, another DJ, who eventually became the bomb squad of the production and music writing part of Public Enemy. They were at a conference in L.A., and someone handed T a cassette of some really cool new rap music. T listened to it, freaked out, and brought it to the plane back, played it for Keith Shockley. Keith said he'd never heard anything like it and was just blown away. Keith's reaction made T bring it to Dr. Dre and Ed Lover and all of us at MTV Raps. And when we listened to it, we'd never heard anything like it. And that was NWA. Now, we were doing the weekday show, not the weekend show. That was Fab Five Freddy. And we played it for Pierre Dougherty and Ted Deming, who were the producers of the show. May they both rest in peace. And we said, they didn't give us a playlist because they didn't think we were going to last, and we were playing anything we wanted. And we wanted to play NWA because it was the most radical thing we've ever heard. What we heard was F the Police, but we called the record company and they said they sent the video, and MTV, they never heard back. So we looked everywhere for this video, and we knew it wasn't F the Police. We couldn't play that, but it was Straight Outta Compton. And we looked everywhere. We found it in the Do Not Play closet. MTV was, at that time, was funded by the record labels. I mean, they did all the advertising. They brought all the stars on, and independent labels. And remember, NWA was on the label that did the California Raisins. That was their big hit. So, and I think the Chipmunks, something like that. And it was a cheaply produced video, and they threw it in the Do Not Play closet. We dug it up, beeped out the curse words, and played it. And the response was so incredible that it launched NWA, and it launched MTV Raps, and it was, that's how. Now remember, this was called reality rap. Gangster rap was actually referring to one artist, Ice-T, because Ice-T was in a gang, and he made no bones about it. So they called it gangster rap. What NWA was doing was reality rap, where they were telling the story of their neighborhood. And it sounded like gangster because everyone was being harassed by the police and all of that all the time. And there was drug dealing in South Central, and the gangs were there, so nobody's making bones about it, but they were not. Only Eazy-E was an actual gangster. And since the record companies didn't fund rap music because they thought it would only play to a niche crowd and it wasn't going to last, it was a fad, most of the kids that wanted to get into the studio, because you couldn't do it at home on your computer like you can now, you had to pay money for a real studio to get in there to make a tape to get to the record labels. So, or create your own label. So drug money and gang money wound up funding a lot of this stuff, and they became managers, producers for the record labels. And so that became, the term gangster rap was more marketable, so they changed NWA's reality rap to gangster rap. And that's how gangster rap got started. And in this mix between, the Sugar Hill Gang, now you say Sugar Hill Gang. Sugar Hill Gang was a real street gang. And if you've seen The Warriors, the beginning of the movie The Warriors, there was a guy who tried to unite the gangs to take on the mafia and control all crime in New York City, and he was assassinated. That led to a gang war. The black Muslims, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Farrakhan, and all the religious leaders and community leaders got together and forged a peace. And that's kind of when Frank Lucas and the mob took everything over, if you've seen American Gangster, from Bumpy Johnson, who did it all the way back into the 1920s. So these gangs were looking for a way to make money, and what they found was music, DJing parties and the DJ battles, and who was the best, and that's why rap music started as MCs, where they would introduce the records like you heard on the radio, like Wolfman Jack and stuff. And eventually they became rhymes, and the rhymes became longer, and that turned into rap music, and Sugar Hill Gang put out the first rap record at Rapper's Delight. Now that is really the story of the gangs on the East Coast. On the West Coast, the gangs never evolved. The music sound came over, and the money of the gangs poured into the music to create it. And the situation with the police grew out of a misunderstanding of the Black Panthers. And this is really important to understand Tupac. Tupac's mom was a bigwig in the Black Panthers. And we get a lot of bad rap on the Panthers, but they weren't what they were. The police didn't go into the neighborhoods to patrol the neighborhoods. It only went in there for raids. Most of the police force at that time was white, and it wasn't diversified, and they didn't go in those neighborhoods. They didn't care. They just looked at everyone as a criminal. Every young black kid was a potential criminal. And the Black Panthers stepped in to fight the drug dealers. That's why they carried the guns, the military-style uniforms, which was a big influence not only on Tupac, but also Public Enemy and Professor Griff in the style of dress that they used for their marketing and their promotion of who they were. And you find out that Tupac's stepfather, his real father, left. Tupac's stepfather robbed a bank to raise money to fight the Vietnam War, because he felt like all the poor black people were going to fight the war and the rich kids were getting deferments. And there was a lot of political upheaval at that time when Tupac was born, and he was born into that kind of politics. The Black Panthers did break the law as far as vigilantism, and there were shootouts and stuff, but those were with drug dealers, to get the drug dealers and the criminals, or to protect the neighborhood that the cops wouldn't do. And it's funny, the irony of it is their attempt to patrol the neighborhood and keep people safe forced the police into those neighborhoods to crack down on the Black Panthers. And they were demonized in the press because they really didn't understand them. And it was into this mix that Tupac was born. And it was also the time that the Black Panthers on the East Coast it was the same kind of misunderstanding of what they stood for and why they did what they did. I'm not saying they didn't break the law, but it was in order to be vigilantes. They weren't criminal, and they didn't advocate violence. They advocated protecting your own, which is a very American idea. And from this, the Black Panthers being put down and the police moving into the neighborhoods and the crackdowns, it led to a lot of, I got to say, like the media on TV there were no positive black role models. So, white flight became a real thing. As the gang wars were ending in the city, people were moving out of the city into the suburbs here in Long Island in order to get away from the violence, to have a better life here. But as they moved in, because of the media idea of what the Black Panthers were, and, black people were considered criminals, and crime would come in and property values would drop, white people moved out, and you wound up having black neighborhoods on the East Coast as well as in the West Coast. That's how it all started. And the rap music moved from Queens and Brooklyn into Long Island. And then it eventually moved to Chicago and then to L.A., South Central. And Tupac, mom had become a drug addict, and as she lost faith in politics and everything else, and that's what Tupac was born into. And so he had a sense of politics, of the criminal side of life from his mom and the political side of life from his mom and his stepfather and the criminal system. And he also, had a desire to be an artist. From a very early age, he wound up going to a high school for the performing arts. And actually, Jada Pinkett Smith was another person that went to the same school as him. So he didn't have that gangster background. But because of who his mom was, his music in the beginning became party music when he was working with Digital Underground. And then as he branched out onto his own, he started to realize that he thought he could bridge the gap between the gangs and the street people and the activists and the politicians, people that were active in politics, in the society, in black neighborhoods. He thought he could bridge that gap through rap music. And that was his goal. And as he developed, he had a lot of ideas. Now, a lot of people think he was a thug because he put thug life on his chest. But thug life is an acronym for the hate you give little infants F's everybody. And what he meant by that was that when you see a child, a black child, and, I'll use a bad word here, niglet, was a phrase that went around because it was an idea that the child is already destined to be a criminal. And he was not only fighting against it, embracing it by saying, yeah, I'm going to be what you think, what I'm supposed to be. I'm going to embrace the life of the wild criminal, but I'm going to do it with a brain and use it to better the people and bridge the two gaps of society. Now, how this ties into Public Enemy is the fact that Public Enemy, when they started, they thought they were going to get resistance because of their militant political stances from white people. It wound up that they got more flack from black people who thought, keep quiet, keep your head down, which was very, going back to slavery kind of way of thinking, that they were trying to get people to rise up and get involved in politics and vote. So in that sense, Tupac and Public Enemy had a lot in common. But, Keith Shockley did the score for Juice. One of my good friends is Ernest Dickerson, who is Spike Lee's cinematographer. And Ernest directed Juice, Tupac's first movie. And Keith did the soundtrack. He was also doing the soundtrack for my movie. And, he was interviewed on Your Own TV Raps. That's how I met him. We saw him at different parties and stuff and on the radio. So I didn't know him that well, but even Mickey Rourke, did the movie Bullet with him and became very good friends with him. And Tupac, when this whole thing happened in Washington about labeling the records of the violence in gangster rap, he was forced into a leadership position that he wasn't ready for. We have to remember that Tupac was 25 years old when he died. And at that age, peer pressure is a real thing. And Mickey used to tell me about how, on the set, he was the nicest, funniest, coolest guy, and then his buddies would show up, and he'd become, more wild and crazy like them, And I think the key to understanding Tupac is the fact that he was a young 20-something kid trying to find out who he is. And, being a little different with wherever he went, but he had this sense of responsibility. That's why, he was conflicted. People don't understand, like, how do you write songs of bitches and hoes and all that language? And, and he's trying to communicate in a way that the people in the street understood. So he would know that he's one of them because he could move between both the the activists and the street gangs. And he was not a member of a gang. And he wound up, the Black Women's Coalition came out against him for using that language. But why did they pick on him? Because he became the center of the storm in Washington. They mentioned his name. Senators were talking about him and his music. So he wrote a song about how much he loved women. And they would be like, well, how does that make sense if you're writing bitches and hoes? Because he was trying to find a way to bridge that gap. And he wasn't, really a thug, because you got to remember, he, at the end of his life, he was dating Quincy Jones's daughter. And, he was always looking for that father figure. I think you looked for it for Mickey, and you looked for it, with Quincy Jones. And, his attitude changed when, he was accused of rape. And basically, he had a woman that was in the room. He had sex with her. She was drunk. She fell asleep. He left. And the other guys that were there, his supposed buddies, raped her. And he was the one that was blamed. And he always understood after that time in prison that society and the music industry gives you everything you need to destroy yourself. And that's true for me, for everybody, because you're allowed certain, what Trump said about grabbing a pee and nobody says anything or does anything, that's real. It happens. And you can sometimes fall into the trap of embracing that stuff and to empower yourself. You feel powerful, you feel special, and, it's a dangerous road. And Tupac walked on that road a little bit and then came back. And, this is where the whole idea of what happened to him comes into play. When he gets out of prison, he is friendly with Biggie. They're actually friends for a long time. And Biggie owed Tupac some money for working on his album, and he didn't pay it, and then Tupac showed up to get it, and that's when he got shot in the lobby, and they grabbed his platinum and diamond chain. Robbed him. And they shot him in the groin, they shot him in the chest, they shot him in the head. Look, it was a scrape, and he lived. But, then he went into prison on the rape charge, and when he got out, he was kind of broke. And he always felt that Biggie set him up. And there's a lot of reasons why Puffy's involved, and, that he wasn't in Puffy's crew. He was doing Interscope, which was a record label, and he was competing against Puffy's independent label. So, and Biggie was on the label, and he wouldn't sign with Puffy, and they wanted to teach him a lesson and didn't pay him, and they shot him and robbed him. And nobody knows if that's true. But Tupac put in his music and fooled around with one of Biggie's girls and blamed Biggie, and that was the beginning of the East Coast, West Coast feud. That's really how it started. And there was always a feeling in the West Coast of inferiority, even though their music, the gangster rap, was selling more at this point than East Coast rap. The problem was that rap music originated on the East Coast, so West Coast always felt less. So they felt they had to challenge the East Coast. And those challenges, which based on, who made better records, and which was always part of rap. If you remember the early songs, I'm the best, I'm the greatest, I got the best rhymes. It was always part of it because it grew out of the DJ battle. So that kind of got out of hand based on what happened with Biggie and Tupac. It became like this, you're either one side or the other. And it was pushed by, at this time, the independent labels, because rap had gotten so big, were being bought out by the big record companies. So they wanted to push the rivalry because it sold records, it got them in the media. Negative publicity or not, publicity is publicity. And in the midst of all this comes Suge Knight. Now, I know Suge Knight well. He's not an animal. He's not a monster. But, I grew up in my dad's store in Little Italy. I knew all the mobsters there. And there was one rule that my dad always said: be friends with them. They're the greatest friends, but don't do business with them. Because if you do business with them, you're involved, and then you're in. And then you got to accept the consequences for that. Suge is a very gregarious. To give you the shirt off his back, wherever he sees me in L.A., he pays for everything. He's just, he'll do anything for a friend. But you get in business with him, you got to know what you're getting into business with. And after Tupac got out of jail and Disco dropped him, they didn't want Tupac, and he was hurting for money. Now, the way the record industry works is you usually get a small advance, and then you get a percentage of royalties for the sales of the record. Well, Tupac needed money, and Suge stepped up and loaned him a lot of cash to get him straightened out in exchange for a 3-record deal. And Tupac did the double record, All Eyes on Me, which became the name of the movie, and Machiavelli, which was the Killuminati record. And that was in response to Tupac reading The Prince by Machiavelli in prison. And he began to understand how you have to create your own destiny and manipulate things to make your destiny a reality of what you want. So he did the 3 albums, and he wanted to do the first double, rap record, 2 CD, which was All Eyes on Me. And what happened was, since Tupac gave us just a huge advance to him, he completed his 3-record deal and now wanted to use the success that Suge had gotten him through Death Row with Dr. Dre and everybody else working to promote his stuff. And they were still being paid back on royalties, the huge advance they'd given to Tupac. So Suge said, you got to do another 3 records for me, and I'll give you a regular advance, and then the royalties will pay me back, then you can go, because I loaned you all this money, and I've lost money if you only do the 3-record deal. Tupac had the idea, if he wanted to go back to the East Coast and get Puffy and the guys that screwed him by creating a rival record company on the East Coast to Puffy. And Suge and him made a deal and said, look, you create Death Row East, that way I can still make money off you, can pay me back, and we don't have to part ways. And since the name was already established and the business was already there, and it was the most successful record label probably of all time, Tupac agreed. And then they went to Vegas. And, a lot of people say it was Puffy didn't want the competition, and there was a lot of back and forth. But as I understand it, the truth of the matter is, when he was in Vegas, he was with Quincy Jones' daughter at that point, and he was finding his voice, and he was influenced by what was going on, Public Enemy, and all of that, and was trying to become a way to complete that mission that he had a few years before, the idea of bridging that gap and becoming more of a leader, which he didn't really want, but kind of was forcing him by what happened in Washington. And he felt like his mom, who she was, the Black Panthers, he's sort of like, this is his legacy. This is what he has to do. And the way to do that is to control the music, which would be to control his own record label. And that would be a complete difference from what Puffy was doing, because Puffy was trying to fight or compete against what was going on the West Coast and get away from that, I'm the best kind of rap that had been around for so much on the East Coast to create a kind of gangster pop rap that they were doing on the East Coast, and sampling, taking songs for the Police or whatever and sampling them. You got to remember, this is a time of the lawsuits that from the stuff that was sampled, and Public Enemy did 10 samples in a song, and that was usual. After the lawsuit by James Brown, you had to pay for each of those samples. So Puffy said, "I'll just pay for one song and just redo it," and that's how that all started, because it was cheaper. And in the midst of this, in Vegas for the fight night, someone downstairs saw a guy wearing Tupac's chain that was stolen from him when he was shot and robbed. And Tupac, surrounded by his boys for the fight, went a little crazy, and he went down there to get the guy that shot him. Now, he didn't go there with a gun. He went down there and beat the shit out of him and took the train back. Later that night, and these were gang guys. These were gangsters. Later that night, in the car with Suge, car pulled up and shot Tupac in the car with Suge. And a few days later, Tupac died. And my personal opinion is it wasn't Puffy, and it wasn't an East Coast, West Coast thing. It was a chain, a stupid freaking chain that got Tupac killed. He went and beat the guy up that shot him, and the guy came back and killed him. No big conspiracy, no explanation. It was all about the chain. And for those, now that all this music has come out since Tupac's death, especially since it has a lot of relevance to what's going on, and updated music styles, a lot of people think he might still be alive. And there's also saying that the autopsy photos the tattoos don't match. There's a lot of that. When in fact, that I know for a fact, they used Tupac's vocal track and not the music tracks. Those were all rewritten. And the songs that Tupac wrote, I'm doing the Public Enemy documentary called Spectre City. When Reagan killed Roosevelt is the name of it, but it's a story of Spectre City, and we're doing the movie also. So I know that this idea that the music is relevant, but if you take Public Enemy's music from 1985 and play it today, it's still the same issues. So the relevancy, the timeliness of the lyrics is just because in the inner cities, a lot hasn't changed. We still have police shootings, police brutality, all this stuff. And, good cops not crossing the thin blue line to turn in the bad cops and all that stuff that you hear on Ferguson and all that on TV. So there's still poverty, there's still lack of jobs, low wages, all that stuff. There's still crime. So all that stuff is relevant. So it's really not easy to say, okay, because the rebel music is relevant, then Tupac is still alive. And the music was updated by Death Row to make it more sellable. And all that music kept coming out because Tupac was always writing. He was constantly writing stuff down and coming up with rhymes and stuff. Mickey used to talk about it. He'd come up like 3-4 rhymes in a day, while they were waiting to shoot, while they were setting up the shots on Bullet. So, whether he's alive or not is a story into itself, but his life, I think, is one of the saddest things, because I think he was just coming into himself, finding out who he was as a man, and putting together his program going forward, that I think he would have been extremely relevant and important, because he was really trying to end the violence and fight against the stereotype or the racist idea that a black child born is just a future criminal, whether they're from the hood or middle class or whatever, you know. And I think, he was going there, especially, a few years later, Dr. Dre left Death Row and Death Row fell apart. And, I think he would have been completely on his own. Death Row always had the gangster element in it because of how it started with gang money. So I think once he'd gotten away from that a few years later, I think it would have been amazing what this guy could have yet done, not only as an actor, because he's a very talented actor, but also as a musician, an artist, a poet, and so many other things. And you got to realize he sold so many records and did so much, and he died at 25. Or you can look at it the other way and say, because he's a little bit of an enigma, that it all got to be too much. The fighting with Puffy and the not being able to get out from Death Row because he felt he owed money, and him being put up as a leader, which is very similar to Jim Morrison. And if there's any of the old rockers that are alive, probably be Morrison. But in that sense, you could see how he would walk away from it all if he decided that he just didn't want it anymore. So it's an interesting question, but I think we keep asking the wrong questions because the music that came out after his death, the updating of the music, and probably the most interesting thing is the mistaken tattoos on the autopsy photos. That's always been a bone for me about whether, that's him in the autopsy photos. But that's the whole story of Tupac in a nutshell.
There is one piece of striking evidence, because Tupac died September 13th, 1996 on Las Vegas Boulevard. But the people who continue to have this inkling that he might be alive go back to 2004, and there's over 2 million views on YouTube showing Suge Knight joking around with looks to be an iconic twin of Tupac in Cuba, of all places. And the two are heard talking about Biggie Smalls, and it just seems quite odd. And maybe this is a conspiracy theorist in me, man. I'm just not sure that he is fully gone.
Well, I will say this, that the Suge Knight that's played in the movies and on TV in the media is the Suge Knight I know. He is a guy that will do anything for a friend, and it could just be, that Tupac wanted out, and they set that all up to cover for him. But somebody died that night. If you believe that Tupac is alive, then there would have to have been a conspiracy with the police, the coroner's office, and everything, all services, the hospital, everything, to believe that the guy that was shot that night didn't die. So that means that somebody, Tupac impersonator, and look, it's not beyond, Eddie Murphy, also from Roosevelt, always had impersonators impersonating him going in the front while he would go in the back. So, and with no bodyguards. And he would, at the China Club, when we used to have Monday nights, he would come into the kitchen and he'd have a double that came into the front door that all people would run over to, and then he wouldn't sign autographs and he'd walk in. So it's not beyond the pale that there was a body double, but you have to say that they killed him. And I don't think Tupac would ever be the guy that killed someone for no reason. That's just it's not him. No matter how he presented himself, when you met him, that's not who he was. He was you could have a conversation with him about anything, politics, whatever's in the news, movies, anything, any pop culture thing. He was a very personable, smart guy. Sometimes you meet people and they have that brightness about them. You just feel how smart they are, and that's what you got from Tupac. I mean, so that's the thing that gives me pause. I wouldn't put it past Suge if the guy did something and he set him up, but Tupac would have had to been in on it. And I don't think in any way Tupac would let a brother die so he could escape.
No, I understand that, but I mean, there's also coincidence. There's apparent photos of him with Beyonce, with Kim Kardashian, with 50 Cent, and appearing in other rap videos. Now, unless Suge Knight has someone looking like Tupac running around playing this game so he can still make money off of those albums and those songs that haven't been created yet, it's a brilliant masterpiece of deception.
That's Suge. That is Suge to a T. That I wouldn't put past him for a minute. Keeping the legend of Tupac being alive to sell records is you remember, the more controversy around Tupac, the more the record sells, and he still has the rights to that stuff. Even though Death Row is gone, all that stuff was recorded in Death Row Studios, and he has the rights to it. So, it's not beyond my thinking that Suge would pull something like that. And his justification would be, I'm making money, but I'm making money for Tupac's family too. So, that's how he would justify it. But for sure, and believe me, it's not a question I would ask Suge. Just, when we first started getting to know each other, this is a fun story about Suge, is I was at the Four Seasons in L.A. with a frat buddy of mine. And Suge comes over and he looks at me, he remembers me, and he's like, I know you. Where do I know you from? And I said, I work with Dr. Dre, and they just had the West Coast Dr. Dre from NWA, and just had that falling out, and Suge wanted to kill Dre, for breaking up Death Row. And he gave me that 60-yard cross the prison yard, I'm going to shiv you stare. That was so cold-clocked that I immediately jumped and said, and Ed Lover. And the minute I said Ed Lover, it was the other Dr. Dre. He goes, oh, yeah, how you doing, man? And he came over and shook my hand. He gave me a hug. He poured over a bottle of Cristal. He handed me a Cuban cigar. I mean, it was just, that's Suge. It's like there's two sides to the guy, and you don't want to see the other side, and you don't see that side by not doing business with him and not crossing him if you do. That's just the way it is. So I would never put it past him that would do that to make money,
No, I understand that. And let's face it, marketing and timing is everything. There's still a large magnet of people who are craving new material. And if he has, let's say, 200 songs that it's just vocally recorded, you could put any music behind that. That's pretty much 20 years worth of albums that you're going to make money off of. It's simple mathematics, Ian.
Oh, yeah. And, look, there's still, Biggie interviews that are turning into records. They just put out a new Biggie album with Faith Hill. It was Faith Hill? Whatever her name is. And, it's still, putting out, he's not even rapping on the album. He raps a couple of lines, but it's mostly interviews, quotes of his that she sings around. So they're still making money off these guys. And I guess in a way you want to hear everything. Like, they just put out the complete recordings of Elvis Presley when he started out, and you hear different takes of songs and stuff. You want to hear everything if you're a fan. So I don't really have a problem with it. but the more controversy you have, like even at the end of All Eyes on Me, they perpetuated this idea that Puffy got a hitman to hit Tupac, and then he pulled out of it, and the hitman had already done the job, and he refused to pay because he didn't want to be involved in it. So, Biggie got shot. I mean, they got so many stories on this, and it for someone that's from the East Coast that hangs out on the West Coast like me, it becomes very difficult to embrace any story because you're always offending someone who believes one way or the other. So I always find the best answer is I don't know, and I don't. I don't know. I know what people that were very close to Pac, seemed to think that it was more about the necklace, but there was a vested interest from the record labels and the marketing people to keep the West Coast feud, East Coast feud alive. Because it sold records and perpetuated the image of gangster rap, which was never, gangster rap was never about being a gangster. That's where it all got twisted. The record labels pushed those albums and the artists to be more gangster. Gangster rap was about reality rap, which was supposed to be about what was happening in the neighborhood. It wasn't supposed to ever be about glorifying the gangster lifestyle. That's exactly the opposite of what NWA and Tupac and the early quote-unquote gangster rappers were about.
Ian, I got to shut you off right there, man, because that's 2 hours in. We're done. Hour number 2. I know. Flew by, buddy. Flew by. But I'm going to get you to hold on because we are going to go to our second and final break of the night. We're getting into the paranormal chatter in hour number 3. Ian and I are going to call that one a draw. I still think Tupac's alive. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. Ian Holt, he's going the distance with us tonight, as he does every second month when he's on the show with us. You stay tuned. Your questions as we get into paranormal television, paranormal radio, so on, so forth. Whatever we talk about, we'll just get ghostly in the next hour. We'll talk to you on the other.
We're getting strange on Saturday nights. Hi there, this is Dave Cruz, and each Saturday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I will take you on a tour of the weird and obtuse on Spaced Out Saturdays, from aliens to Sasquatch and every tinfoil hat in between. We got you covered. Join us at spacedoutradio.com for Spaced Out Saturdays. See you there.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Would you like someone you can trust to look into it? We have just the place. The SOR Sightlines Report is the place for you to find answers. Whether it's Bigfoot, UFOs, Dogman, ghosts, aliens, or anything strange, the Sightlines Report will get you connected with one of our expert researchers to find out what's going on. All of your personal information is kept 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines Report, a place for you to find the answers you need. Only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4 Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories. From alien encounters to the latest conspiracies, you won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter, online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
A child grew up too fast, went running wild. Now we don't know who to pray to anymore.
Welcome back to the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, Dr. Michael Salla is going to join us. We're getting into the exo world of exopolitics. 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in at WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listeners. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Iracundulus. Iracundulus is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets the password each and every night, right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter, at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect with me live during the show as well. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. We're on iHeartRadio in the United States. Tune in. iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month, crank up the Bumblefoot, read the Encounter online, shop at our store, and so much more. Everything at spacedoutradio.com. For the final time tonight, we introduce Ian Holt. He's kind of our guru on everything around here. Last hour, we were talking about the Tupac Shakur conspiracy. Hour number 1, we were talking Stan Romek. Now we're getting into the paranormal and paranormal television. How you doing, Ian?
I'm doing great. I can't believe the hour went by so fast. I don't think I stopped talking the whole time.
You didn't.
To fit the whole story in.
You didn't. I had people on Twitter asking if I was still alive.
It's a lot of story in a short time.
Absolutely. It's always fun when you're on, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us again. And you'll be back.
Oh, my pleasure.
You'll be back in September or October, one of those 2 months. We'll figure it out. Probably October. We'll get another date set for you. I'll just throw one on the calendar and let you know, and you'll be like, okay, what the hell, let's do it. You know, that's.
I'm hoping that one will be live on the set of Unhinged.
Excellent. I hope so. That'll be really cool if you're filming Unhinged at that time, because that you'll take us through that movie. So we'll definitely.
Absolutely, because with a horror movie, it's usually night shoots, so it's most likely we'll be on the set. So if the days work out that we're doing the night shoot, you know, get all the actors on, we'll get the director on, you know, I'll take you around the set. Maybe we could do some, I'll shoot some video to post so everybody will see.
Absolutely. I still got to try and figure out a way to get down there for that. I still have to figure out a way.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think there would be a couple of days. I'd need a couple of days off. I know that. We'll figure it out. But I would love to get down there, man, for it, because I think it would be a lot of fun. That is for sure.
Well, I'll tell you, you know, we already talked to Mickey and everything the last day, because he's not shooting the whole 30 days. He shoots for a week. So we're shooting all of his stuff together. So the last night he's like, we're going out like we never went out before, because everyone's going to be there, Costa Spandalore and Mickey and everyone. So you got to come down and for that one. That's for sure. If we go out that night, that's the night.
They're going to say, what's with this short, fat, gray-haired Canadian guy hanging out with us talking aliens? That's what they're going to be saying.
Well, I'll tell you, you know, Costas is a bar we always go to in L.A. called Red Rocks. And down the block is a place called Lulabelle's. And they close at 2 a.m. And Costas and Mickey and everyone goes there after 2, and the owners sit down and break out the ouzo and the Greek music, and Costas goes into the kitchen and starts cooking. And Costas is an incredible cook. And it's just the most fun you could possibly have, just telling stories and laughing guys' night out. So that's what we got to do.
Absolutely. Like I said, I'm going to try and get there, because I want to see it. I want to see it behind the scenes. So we'll definitely try and do that. Over the last couple of weeks, there's a new paranormal television show on by Rob Lowe called The Lowe Files, going into everything from Bigfoot to UFOs, ghosts, cryptids, aliens, whatever it is. And I'm going to be honest, I haven't seen an episode, but a good friend of my show and one of my big helpers behind the scenes, Everett Thiemer, was watching last night. And it's the same people at the same locations doing the same interview. Maybe the host, in this case it's Rob Lowe and his sons who are doing this. And I'm not here to criticize Rob Lowe for getting into the field. He has a keen interest. Why not run with it? You know, but is this not becoming way too repetitive, Ian?
You know, I saw the trailer for it, and you know, I was kind of like, oh my God, because you know, in one sense it's like, okay, now we've got celebrity people doing this, could we lose any more credibility? You know, and on the other hand, I'm like, well, he's going to bring a lot of new people to it, and maybe give it, if he treats it, you know, with respect, the subject matter, even if he's going back to the same places, he's going to bring a lot of new people, eyeballs to it, that, and maybe open some minds to what's going on. I hope he's treating it right, but my sense of it was a little bit of the Osbournes on a ghost hunt, you know, and and that to me it just hurts us more, you know. I don't mind people going back to the same places. I really look for that in the shows, because if evidence matches up between shows and they're professional, it only enhances our argument. So, you know, going back to the same old haunted places isn't a bad thing, because the root of all scientific method is to be able to replicate the findings. If you can replicate the findings, it's considered, you know, a peerable, reviewable experiment. So in that sense, it's not bad. It's just how serious they take it. You know, I hate shows that put in, you know, the big scary musics and edit it in a way that, you know, creates a suspense that's not there, you know, to try and scare you or something like that. I like it raw, like Ghost Hunters. That's because it feels, because then I can watch it and it's not just a TV show. I'm learning something, you know, and that's what these shows should be about. You know, the nature of them are creepy anyway, but, you know,
I understand that.
To force it.
Ian, I understand that, but going to the same locations and having the same curators tell the same stories, and everything is the same. You can't tell me there's not more than 26 haunted places in the world, because there's only 26 parts to a season. You know?
Right, but there's two reasons for doing that from a producer's point of view. One is those places have proven results over time, a lot of them. So you want to get Rob Lowe and his kids in a situation where something happens. That's good producing. That's good television. You're also, from a marketing standpoint, and this is just the business side, you're bringing, you gotta feel with doing Rob Lowe, the show's not for you or for a lot of the listeners of this show. Who it's for is for the, you know, the tabloid hunters and the, you know, the people that don't watch those shows, but will watch it because it's Rob Lowe. So for a lot of the people that are watching it, they're first timers, and they're being introduced to it through Rob Lowe because he's a celebrity. That's the difference. It's not like, you know, Ghost Hunters where they brought, you know, where they would bring a celebrity along and bring him into the science of it, and just to enhance the show for a special episode. When you're doing the Rob Lowe show, you're bringing new eyes to it. People that watch entertainment television and reality shows for entertainment value, you're bringing them to this. So that's new eyeballs. So that for us, it's old hat. For them, it's new. And that's the audience they're going after with this. Because the ghost hunting shows have become so popular with no names or names that grow from within the community, that it was inevitable that someone was going to do a celebrity show version to see if they could replicate that success with a wider audience. It's about money.
I understand it's about money, and you know, Rob Lowe, even though he's probably fallen into that BC category of celebrity status now, you know, because he hasn't done much since Wayne's World, let's be honest, you know, at least in my opinion. And I'm not slagging the guy for having an interest or wanting to do this and, you know, making this special project for his sons and being able to travel the world for his sons. You know, he's lucky enough to have that opportunity and that famous notoriety in order to do that. And what a cool way to spend some time with your kids. Let's face it, okay?
And giving them a career.
Exactly. Well, I have no problem with that. Why not? Obviously he loves his boys. They all have a keen interest in this. Why not use his name to do something like this? I guess what I'm saying in retrospect, it isn't so much about Rob Lowe as it is about it's the same diatribe in the same locations every time. There are so many different haunted locations out there. Why not make it interesting by taking us to some of these places that maybe none of us have ever heard from? Take your boys to that place in British Columbia where Sasquatch is seen almost on a weekly basis. Take them to another UFO spot besides Area 51 because how many more long-range video cam shots do we need of the camo dude sitting on a hill in a 4x4? You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Everything is the same.
I'll tell you why they don't in the first season. I'll tell you why they don't. Because you want to grab people in the first season as they watch another season. And as a producer who's worked on a reality show, when I did the vampire reality show, American Vampires, the scariest thing for us was not knowing, and why it was only a limited series, 13 episodes, a mini-series, because even the producers of the show that were putting up the money didn't know what the show was going to be every week. It's not like every week you go catch crab on Deadliest Catch. You know they're going to catch crab. With this kind of show, you don't know what's going to happen. So you try to create and control a storyline as much as you can to make it interesting in the first season, because to be out there on a limb throwing money and not knowing what you're going to get every week when people aren't invested in the show already is a very scary place to be. So by going to the known places that have these cool stories and like Area 51 trying to get in, you know kind of what you're going to get. So it allows you to edit a story together in each episode where you're not flying by wire, because you're investing a lot of money per episode, and what you don't know what you're going to get. So once people are invested in the show and they like it, you can go and take chances. In the beginning, you try to control as much as possible so that you know you have something that will edit together. And that's the thing. That's my opinion of why they're going to these places. And if there is a lot of activity at these places that have been gone to so many times and over again, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, every time I go there, something happens. So you know that when you're going in, you're going to put your stars in a situation where something most likely will happen. And that's what they need to launch the show, because it's got to have buzz. So that's why they do it. I'm not saying it's right, but it's a business decision based on marketing. And, you can have Jason Hawes find a ghost every week, but it's not going to get as much publicity if Rob Lowe and his sons catch it on camera, because he will be on every talk show talking about it, which promotes the show. So if you catch something and something happens, then you've got a chance at getting the 5 seasons, that the pickup that you need in order to go to syndication where you make your most money. That's
absolutely. And I agree with that. I mean, it all is to test the market. That's the way television works. And better to be safe than sorry. But at some point, if we expand from the Rob Lowe files and just look at paranormal television in general, there are no new angles. The only show that had any new angles or tried to create new angles every time was UFO Hunters with Bill Burns. And we had Bill on
Right.
we had Bill on 2 weeks ago where he actually
And that lasted one season.
where he actually came on and said, you know what? The government did shut us down. We were told. He goes, I had a man in black come up to me and say, well, your show is over after this year because of what you've shown. So, just get your filming over with and get out of here. Right? Like, they knew. They were shutting them down because they were getting close. And, they tried to push the envelope to bring answers, whereas the rest of these shows, they seem so contrived now. You know what I'm saying?
I think the shows, for me, that work the best are the shows where they go to help families that are dealing with an actual haunting or an experience, that they don't know how to deal with. And that, for me, comes from Lorraine Warren. As a child, when she was doing the Amityville horror investigation that was sanctioned by the Vatican, she got the ghost boy pick of the DeFeo child, first family that was murdered there. And it was in the paper. And I got my dad to drive me from Long Beach over to Amityville, and we staked out the place in the morning until she showed up. And I ran over to her and Ed, and I'm 4 years old, and I want to go into the house. And she's like, no, you don't. You're not coming in. And she was very, very nice. And that, it was flash forward 30 some odd years. And I met up with her again when I was researching episode 50. And what I got from her, which I guess she kind of opened up to me because she remembered me as a kid, coming up to her because I was the only one kid that showed up at the house. And, the thing that she gets the most satisfaction from and the most evidence and response from is not walking into a haunted location and just looking for stuff. It's usually the activity that's generated because of a family that's in trouble. So the activity is motivated by something the family is doing, whether it's renovating or they played with a Ouija board or, the house was empty for a long time and they move in, and or the other family that was used to it moved out and didn't say anything. Those kind of situations get the most activity and make the most interesting shows because there's a purpose to it, and I think it's always more interesting than going just into a haunted location because those locations, activity is spotty. One person can go in there, nothing happens, and then, and then all of a sudden another group goes in on another night and something happens. So I think the nature of the shows, they're trying to come up with, locking in for 48-hour lockdown, and they have one, that deals with just romantic situations, and ghosts that were in love and separated. They've got so many different ones, but none of them, all of them are designed in a, like a way to tell a story. And I wish there would be one that would actually collect evidence and present evidence at the end of the season to actual scientists to try and motivate actual research into the field. Do it. If you're going to do it real. To have one show that's absolutely real, where you're doing the scientific method, where you're recording everything the right way, and then, all these shows have a reveal at the end where they show you the evidence, and that's it. From going all the way back to Ghost Hunters and, Destination Truth. The interesting thing about Destination Truth for a while, and as I'm watching it again, I'm remembering it because I'm watching the repeats that's now on Travel Channel. But Josh Gates brought his evidence to actual scientists. And, there were times when he found Yeti hair that they couldn't match to any living creature. And it had partial human DNA in it, but it was still an animal hair, and they couldn't figure it out. He's got footprints that didn't match any living animal. He brought back bones and things. There's the next part of it is to take that evidence and present it somehow, that confront the scientists and the journalists. Why is this field not being followed?
Well,
an activist show.
And I understand that, and there has to be some sort of truth to it. But as well as I do, the TV networks, they want storylines, they want some brashness, they want a conflict, they want that instant hype. And the funny part about it is, when I watch these shows, Ian, and I laugh and I get frustrated every time, where you see the pause and then you hear them play their silent backup background music, all of a sudden starts peaking louder and louder and louder, and then all of a sudden you hear them, did you hear that? Did you hear that? Well, no, all I could hear was your bloody music. I couldn't hear crap. Yeah. They're leading the public on to more and more and never solving anything. And that is, I think the downside of what we're doing, because every show has the same monologue. We do the intro, we do the something funny at the beginning of the show, a little prank or two, maybe showing a meal, and then we go set up the investigation. We talk to the curator, and then we go do our investigation with our camera strapped on, so we got the face cams that are tied to that big hooked pole, so that way you're not carrying them around. And then we run around, well, here's our evidence, and we're not sure we found anything. See you next week.
Yeah, and it goes nowhere. And the profound, and this, and I guess anyone that had an experience knows this, the profound revelation that happens when you confront an intelligent haunt. Not only that you are confronted with what is the truth in the Bible against science, you're confronted with the reality that there is life after death, that existence goes on, and the scariness of the fact that some people don't find their way to the next existence, reincarnation, or whatever it is, and the calmness that comes over you, that feeling that I don't fear death anymore because I've experienced something where an existence survived death. And therefore, that's my proof. That's your personal proof. No matter what anybody else says to you or whatever, how it affects you when loved ones are sick, when friends pass away, how it affects you about how you live your life, the relinquishment of fear. I mean, one of the things I talk about all the time when I do lectures about vampires is why each generation finds vampires. One of the reasons is a vampire, and the fantasy of becoming a vampire is it does away with our greatest fear, our own mortality. And that is just a fantasy. The reality of actually confronting an intelligent haunt that you have an intelligent conversation with, like I have, and that reality that death is not the end, is such a monumental freeing of grief and fear and everything else that goes with it, and for some it's a profound religious experience, for some it's an understanding of science and the nature of the universe, and you begin to see things in a much greater scope. Like we say, okay, so a person dies. We know that data can be stored in electromagnetic fields. There are big scientists at big universities that find molecular tubing in the body that carries electric current, which animates the body, so that's the pathways of the soul through the human body, and that when you die, that energy is released and recycled back to the Akashic record. The Akashic people that tune into the Akashic records have all this information, because that's the well of souls. That's where our energy, just like, you have the cloud and you're downloaded from the cloud, you get re-downloaded, reincarnated, or you're uploaded into the Akashic record, which is in some way heaven. Everything you hear about becomes a bigger world with more possibilities. And you're not getting that from those shows. You're not having that revelation. And when I did Jason Hawes' radio show, we had a really intense conversation. Jason never talks about why he got involved. He always says that's a personal story. And off the air, we've talked about it. And one of the things...
Stop right there. Stop right there for a second. I don't care how personal it is. Okay, we saw Ryan Buell do the same thing. Every episode, it was my own personal experiences that I don't talk about. Oh, don't give me that crap. Your audience owes it to you owe it to your audience for your own credibility to share why you were there. Nothing is as horrific out there, okay, that you cannot share with anybody. That crap right there, whether it's Jason Hawes, Ryan Buell, or anybody else, I got an issue with that. I really do have an issue with that. Because, you know what? I've put my ass on the line, personally. I've done Ouija board shows. I've talked about my alien experiences. I've talked about my paranormal experiences, my Bigfoot experiences, meeting with the angel of death twice. Okay? The honesty of the host will come through, and your audience will love you more if you tell them the truth. I got an issue with that. Sorry, I had to vent.
With Ryan, I'm with you with Jason, and Grant. But Ryan, I was involved with Ryan when they discovered the hidden pentagram in the walls of the West Virginia State Penitentiary. Now, Ryan's, Ryan was dating Sergei on the show. That's common knowledge now. He was gay. But Ryan refused to talk about his instigating it because it got into his relationship with the Catholic Church and him being gay and him not wanting to be out. So there were extenuating circumstances to Ryan's reluctance to talk about it because his family didn't know and they were religious and there would be problems. So I excuse Ryan for that because it was much bigger than just sharing something with the audience. It was something that his family didn't know, and it was his friends knew, his close friends knew, but if you were on set with him, you knew, and it's also led Ryan to his downfall, which was when the church refused to do the exorcism. He decided he wanted to help the family and do it himself. And that demon possessed him and followed him. And it led him to drugs and alcohol and the ruination of his life and eventually prison. He was messing with forces that he wasn't trained to mess with. And that's the one thing that I got from Lorraine. If the church doesn't okay it, she most likely will not perform an exorcism. Whether it be the house or a person or anything, because the church behind you, and an example of this is how she cleared the Amityville house was the church sending her a cross, a relic cross that had a piece of the true cross that Christ was crucified on to her because the demon was so powerful. And those are the kind of things that you do not get backup on when you go alone. And Ryan, with all his good heart to help these people, put himself in real severe danger. And there were a lot of people around him that told him don't do it, but he wasn't going to leave his family hanging. And this demon has wreaked havoc on his life. So, there was its own case. Jason and Grant, because it deals with deep family issues, they don't talk about it because it's kind of like, and I'm not saying they're right or wrong. What I'm for them, this is a piece of their personal life that they feel there's a separation from what they, the public and keeping something private. And a lot of celebrities feel that way. And you got to also understand that you decided to do this show. You made it happen. So you have an openness and a freeing of it because of how this is your baby. Grant and Jason were doing this privately before there was ever a show. The show just kind of happened, and it was a way of financing what they were doing and helping more people, and it grew into this huge thing, and they didn't go out to look for a show. So it's a little different with them, how they. No,
and I can understand that, but and once again, Ian, I apologize for cutting you off because I am passionate about this, and I'm sure people can hear it in my voice. The biggest problem that we have in this field is nobody knows who is being honest and who is just telling a story. Everybody has an experience. You're not in this field, or very few are in this field, to try and figure out what's going on just because they believe. And if we're not going to bring our own experiences forward to talk about them as to why we are doing it this way. For instance, I look at that whole Taps family, and I have no problem calling them out on certain aspects of their group. For instance, going to a location, grabbing evidence, and then some groups don't even show that evidence back to the person. They're like, thank you, yes, your place is haunted, we're out of here, goodbye. What good does that do? Okay, share your experiences. Okay, I heard a rumor, and from a very credible source, that one of the stories that Jason doesn't want out is that he is very psychic. And he doesn't want that coming through on air because he wants the credibility of doing serious research and not using his own intuitive abilities.
And yet, I will say this. I didn't understand why things always seemed to come to me. What was this? Now, I'm not psychic, but when I go to places, things happen, and usually pretty dramatic stuff. And it's like, was I open to it? What was it? Now, I'm not going to say Jason's psychic or not, but I will say that Jason led me back through my life to a point where he helped me figure out why these things happen to me. Now, I'll share it here from my angle, but I didn't talk about it for a long time because it dealt with my grandmother, who I love very much, and she died when I was young. And that was my first experience with real death. I'd always been, interested in supernatural ever since I saw. And, how it came about was I saw Planet of the Apes. I really liked Roddy McDowall. It got me interested in movies, and I found out that Roddy McDowall was doing The Legend of Hell House, and it was a double feature with a James Bond movie, and we went to see it, and I never saw a James Bond movie before. It was Live and Let Die. That's why Roger Moore is always my James Bond. But The Legend of Hell House dealt with the science of paranormal and electromagnetic energy, and against the two kinds of psychics and mediums, and all that information in The Legend of Hell House fascinated me. That led me to want to read the Amityville Horror, which I couldn't even read yet. My mom read it to me. She wanted to read me children's books. I said, no, read me Amityville Horror. And when it came out in the paper that Lorraine was doing the investigation and the Ghost Boy pick, and that's why I went to the house. So all that interest, something was forgotten, and Jason helped me find it. When I moved from Brooklyn to Long Beach. This is before Atari. This is before all of that. I didn't know anyone really, so my grandma brought me a bunch of board games. And, you know, at night, I never slept at night. I was always up late. I could never go to sleep early, and even after my parents went to bed, I was up. And the one game I could play with by myself in my room at night was the Ouija board. And why my grandmother bought me a Ouija board, I don't know. I wish I could ask her why that was one of the board games that she bought me when we moved in. Till I made friends and got to know people. Was playing that with that board, and I remember the thing moving, and you're supposed to. I never read the instructions. I never read instructions or anything. So I opened the door and I never closed it, and it's been open all my life. And that was something Jason helped me find, and it was because I opened up to him because he opened up to me about what happened to him. And I think off camera, and I can't say this for sure, but it's a feeling that sharing that with someone allows them to share with him my personal stuff, and that allows him to help you. So I think there is a sharing of what happened, but he does it off camera in real situations to help people. And if he is psychic, I think that's the door that he uses to enter, to allow you to let your feelings and emotions out about certain things. So I think he holds it for a lot of reasons. And there's more to it than just, I'm a host and I should share it. I think he uses it in different ways. Because that's how he helped me.
No, and I understand, and I think that's great. But be honest with your audience. Is that not a fair critique?
It is on a purely show basis, but remember, Grant does, not Grant anymore, but Jason does a lot of work that's not on camera. And I think he's dealt with some real stuff. And I think, like I said, he holds that back because he uses it to help people. It's not like, I don't want to share it. If you talk to him personally, he'll share it. He just won't share it publicly because it allows him when you really need to help someone. And, he really wanted to get to what it was that I was having these experiences all my life. And he figured it was something like that, but I didn't remember it. And he helped me remember it by us talking about stuff that happened to us as children. And that, by not knowing it from the show, was something that allowed me to open up to him and him to help me. So I have a feeling that has something to do with it. I can't be sure, but that's just my gut.
And Ian, that's fine. If you wanna do things, for instance, I don't discuss very often on this show that I have intuitive abilities. I'm not, and it's funny, Everett Thiemer and I were talking about this earlier today. He's like, dude, you gotta come out a little bit more with this stuff. It's eerie what you know. And I said, no, because I don't have the time to practice, so I don't have confidence in what I am doing. I don't know whether it's real or imagination. I really don't. So that's why I don't talk about it a lot on the air. However, if somebody in my audience asks me point blank, and I've had it happen, are you intuitive? Yes. In some ways I am. Yes. That's the problem that I see with a lot of people in the paranormal media. Whether they have a television show, radio show, they're writing documentaries, or they're writing books, there isn't much honesty in this field when it comes to what got you here. And to me, somebody like Jason Hawes or Ryan Buell or whoever it may be, I'm just using those two names. the impact that they could have with their celebrity status by being honest with their own stories and abilities. Now, Ryan Buell's a little bit different. Thank you for explaining that. But the impact that they could have in this community could be a total tidal wave of positivity in helping correct this mess that we call the paranormal.
There's a fine line, and it's a shame that it's there, but it exists because of how this field is looked at. You say I take a electromagnetic field meter into a room and I get a response is one thing. When you say you're a psychic, it's immediate upon you that there's ridicule. There is a sense of, I don't want to say jerks, but people just want to test you. And they measure how true you are and they're, how right you are. And people misunderstand the different types of psychic ability, like they don't understand the different types of ghosts. It was a big thing for me to put in the beginning of episode 50, the different kind of haunts. I mean, when I was trying to sell to a studio, and I got offered big money, take out all the science, take out all the religion and what these things mean and just scare us, and I was like, no, I'm going to go independent, make it on my own because I want to make a scary movie, but I also want it to have, something that you walk away from it where you start questioning, what these things are and that the science and the religion of it is. That's why I had two teams of ghost hunters, one more religious based like Ryan and one more scientific based like Jason. And I think Jason and is all about, just showing what happens and not bringing in anything that's not verifiable. All the instruments they use and the cameras and the different wavelength of light cameras and the different mechanical instruments that they keep testing out on the show and the thermal cameras and all these things, I think allowed the show to not feel like an exploitative, Halloween show, and I think that since Ghost Hunters, we have gone in some ways so far off the rails that we have become entertainment television and not an investigative show. And that's one of the things about hunting Bigfoot, is that those guys on that show work very hard to, even though nothing happens in almost every show, almost every place they go, nothing happens. But when something does, it's a real impact, because people tell their stories, but there's no evidence. But when they're out in the woods and you hear a howl or you hear a knock, or a rock is thrown or a footprint is found, it has a lot of weight. And that success of that show proves that there's a large audience out there for real science. And
yes,
you bring the entertainment by the interaction of the people that are doing the investigation.
I get that.
Bobo and them and all of that. That's how you create a show, but you keep the science real. That's what I like.
There is no science there. Using a bunch of technology is not science. They're not in a scientific atmosphere. Okay? Somebody's scratching their balls on the side of the set. Oh, I hear something. Well, that's not science. Right? It's like
there is. I mean, if you have an electromagnetic field meter and it goes off and there's a temperature drop and you ask a question and say, if you walk towards the device, it's a yes. If you walk away, it's a no. And you ask a question and you get an immediate response, That is science. That is proving that there's something there that's turning that machine on and off in an electromagnetic field.
You are in an uncontrolled environment. In order to conduct proper scientific research into the study, you need a control environment that cannot be screwed up by bugs or car horns honking or, somebody farting behind the camera.
Okay.
You can't do it.
Okay, so how do we do that? In order to do that, you would have to create a situation of a house in glass. And it would have to be set on near fresh running water and limestone. And then you'd need to kill someone and see if electromagnetic field traps the spirit. So you bring someone in that's dying and put them up in a house and wait for them to die, or you kill someone. I mean, that's the only way to create a controlled environment.
Absolutely.
And, I'm sure there are people that are in hospice that would be happy to die, to spend their last days in an electromagnetic field controlled house on the right locations, with complete scientific instruments to all the field of light cameras and electromagnetic field camera detectors, the thermal cameras and everything you need to detect a spirit leaving the body or an electromagnetic presence created in the house. I would, I'm not for killing someone to do it, but if someone was on their deathbed and wanted to do this, but I don't think they would put it on television. That would be something that would have to be done as a scientific experiment at a university to be a real scientific experiment. And I think the way we get there to test that out is to put as much science as possible into these shows, where you create enough circumstantial evidence, just like in a trial, that the weight of the circumstantial evidence becomes beyond a reasonable doubt that there's something there. I mean, if you watched Ancient Aliens last week, I mean, you had kids that talking about their past lives, and they would check, and there really is a person, and it really died the way they said, and some of them had the telephone number of the families, their past lives family. I mean, why is that? And you have real scientists looking into it and doing studies, and it's not in the media. Now that's something that can actually be tested.
But at least in the reincarnation cases, okay, it is being done, and these studies are being done in a controlled environment, not in the middle of the forest where every woodpecker that knocks on a tree is a Bigfoot hammering a stick against it.
Well, that's where, the stuff that Josh Gates was doing in Destination Truth that I really found interesting. It would, he brought, like, if he heard a weird call, he would bring that to a scientist who studies animal calls, and they would be able to, like, a lot of times, that's a coyote, that's a hyena, that's this, that's that. They would be able to rule it out, and sometimes it wasn't evidence that they thought it was. In finding Bigfoot, we have evidence that they don't bring to scientists. They just use their own, that's a Bigfoot, and using their own experiences to tell you what it is. Now, I much prefer the Josh Gates method where, it may be a downer at the end of the show, but every once in a while, they found that hair on the tree and tested it. And, yeah. So, I mean, those are the moments when that evidence comes that, why isn't that furthered? Why is that evidence not taken? Because at the end of the day, these guys are making a TV show, and it's not really about getting proof. I would love to see, we're all about funding scientists, right?
Yes.
I'd love to see a show where you go to a university and get scientists that work with electromagnetic fields and all this stuff, and then hire them to do an investigation on a limited run series of of the most active places and in the country and see if in an uncontrolled environment, these professional scientists get, I don't want to say evidence, but get reactions that they can't explain. And then those real scientists producing a paper on what they discover will allow other scientists to try and figure out what it is. Like, Einstein presenting E equals MC squared has set off a ton of surrounding research of why and where and how it is and wormholes and all this other stuff that branched off from it because people wanted to understand why the formula is and why sometimes it doesn't work, which led to the discovery of dark energy, right, in the universe. So, and string theory and chaos theory and all the stuff that rolled off of this, of Einstein's discovery. So if a professional scientist can't get answers and there's a mystery, like what is dark matter? Why are the galaxies moving slower than they should? It's more, more gravity being pressed on them than we can see. There's something else there that we can't see. What is it? We call it dark energy. But in a paranormal situation, if you have reactions that you can't explain why it's happening, when nothing's changed, and you're getting temperature drops of this and that, and you're recording it by professional scientists, then you say, okay, now let's take it to a controlled environment and figure out a way to create an experiment to see what these things are.
Ian, my friend, I love it when we get heated. That's what makes you so much fun coming on, man. That was some good debate that last hour.
I love it.
Absolutely.
I love it, 'cause we're both coming from the same place. We want to get the right answers, and the question becomes, how do you move people? You have to entertain them to get the show on the air. So we have somebody going to these places, but
yes.
you cross that line sometimes of entertainment and is it a science show? And I have a sneaking suspicion that if I was going to do one of these shows, and I think we discussed this about my friend that was doing the theaters, investigating the theaters, because there's so much documented evidence, documented history in those theaters that he could find out if a psychic impression of a person that played in the theater or a guest died, a visitor died there, or a worker died there. He could find that out and see if the psychic impressions matched up to the history. I mean, I've done that myself. When I lived in this in an apartment building, it was once a hotel out here in for the early 1900s. It was a landmark historical building, and I saw this couple walking through like with a muffle for the hands and the old style clothes, and it was like a glowing outline. They walked right through my living room one time, and I was really hungover, and I think that let down my guard that allowed me to see it, still in college. And I started talking to people in the building, and other people had seen them. And I went to the Long Beach Historical Society and found out that there were two lovers that lived there that was a murder-suicide. And this is probably their ghost. So, I mean, with a little bit of effort, a lot of times you can trace this stuff back, just like you do with the reincarnation.
Well, next time you're on, we're going to get more into the reincarnation, my friend.
Absolutely. Is it over already?
It is, man.
God.
It's that time. 3 hours. Gone. Bye. See ya. It's just the way it rolls.
Wow.
What do? We got to wrap up the show. Ian Holt, you'll be back on in October. I'll just slam you into a date like I normally do, and hopefully
Absolutely.
You can make it. That's just the way we seem to do it. My friend, my fellow birthday man, May 24th, just like me, always a pleasure to have you on, bud.
It's a pleasure to be here. It was a lot of fun, and thank you to all the fans for listening to me prattle on for 3 hours.
All right. You hold on, Ian. I'm going to wrap this thing up. Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking us in the background with Little Brother is watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. Tomorrow night on the program, we get into exopolitics. Dr. Michael Sala is going to join us, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. It's going to get a little strange tomorrow night. We're going to get into some deep and heavy topics at spacedoutradio.com. We want to say thank you to everyone on my team. Everett Thiemer, Eric Markham, from the Encounter Online, Tim Doyle and Jolene Lammers, web design, Catherine James, social media, Bob Davis, our great announcer, Kim Gandy, director of business management. That is my team that rocks us through this show. But most importantly, my friends, it's all about you. It's all about you listeners. In the chat rooms, on Twitter, all over social media, sharing this show, bringing new people in. I can't thank you enough for what you do. Because together, my friends, we're going bigger, we're going better, and we're looking to the stars each and every night. Why? Because together we own the night. See you in 21 hours. Mr. Bumblefoot, could you do us a favor? Could you take us home? Have a good one.